And joining us as promised, Democratic Senator from Connecticut and member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Chris Murphy. Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You just got out of the Senate Democratic luncheon talking about DHS funding, what to do next. Can you tell us what you've decided?
Well, I think likely Senator Schumer will make that a formal announcement. But listen, let me say what I think everybody in America wants, and that is for there to be reforms that stop the bloodshed in Minneapolis. And to me, and I think to many of my colleagues, that's a narrow but impactful list of changes. First, we just have to stop these roving patrols. That's what's really endangering citizens. CBP and ICE are just not trained or nor qualified to just be roving the streets asking people to show their papers. Second, people are freaked out, rightfully so, by this new secret police. We need identification. The masks need to come off. Folks need to know who they're dealing with. And then lastly, accountability. We just, have to have accountability for these crimes. And people in this country saw that video and are just furious that nobody is going to be held accountable for it. So I think that's what I'm hearing from people in Connecticut and across the country. That's something that we could get done because those reforms have been on the table, frankly, in the Appropriations Committee for about 6 months. Those are things that we could get done and keep the entire government open and operating, but do it in a way that makes sure that ICE is saving lives or protecting lives rather than destroying and ending people's lives.
Define accountability here, because DHS will say there is accountability. We're doing an investigation. So what is the Senate Democrat version of accountability?
Well, I think it means subjecting federal law enforcement to the same requirements that we subject state and local law enforcement. That means that state governments get to participate in a probe of whether there has been wrongdoing, whether there has been a crime committed. I mean, that's standard procedure, and it's being violated right now. Nobody believes that there's going to be any real independent investigation. And if there's a criminal claim here, then of course that has to be dealt with by the state government. So, yeah, I think we're talking about a state investigation that's real and impartial.
So do you believe that these three things, no roving patrols, no masks, IDs, accountability, these are three areas that you can get on the same page with Republicans in order to avoid a partial government shutdown?
Well, remember, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the illegality. I mean, frankly, CBP shouldn't be operating in the interior. DHS is moving money around and violating the law all the time. We're trying to get a targeted set of reforms done that will save lives. I've talked to Republican senators about that list, which mirrors my priorities. And most all of them said, well, boy, that's pretty reasonable. That's something that we should be able to get done and get done pretty quickly. So, yeah, I don't think Republicans want to be in a position over the next several days, the next several weeks of defending the status quo. What people are watching as American citizens are hunted and killed in Minneapolis. And these set of reforms are things that we can get done, but things that actually would restore public safety to a place like Minneapolis.
Are the Democrats all on the same page? Because there are some Democrats who are calling to abolish ICE entirely.
I think the Senate Democrats are going to be united in the set of sort of recommendations that we make. Obviously, we're a big tent, and so you have a lot of different views. But, we understand that we don't run the Senate, nor the House, nor the White House. If we really want to strip down ICE and rebuild it, make the Department of Homeland Security operate legally every single day, we've got to win elections. But in the interim, we certainly can use the power we have as Democrats, whose votes are necessary in order to pass the budget, to demand these common sense reforms.
Do you believe that saying abolish ICE is going to lose you elections?
Well, listen, I'm somebody who believes you have to break it down and rebuild it. I think most people in this country understand that you need an ability to enforce our immigration laws internally. You want to incentivize people to follow the rules, and you want to disincentivize people to not follow the rules. But this version of ICE is brutal, is lawless, is acting in an inhumane way. And so when we win the election, yes, we are going to have to essentially strip down the existing domestic enforcement agency and rebuild something humane in its place.
Does that include getting rid of some of the people that were hired recently, the ones that haven't gone through what used to be the required training, maybe the ones who haven't gone through full vetting or background checks? There's a reporter who applied to be a part of ICE, and she's been critical of ICE, doing critical reporting on ICE, and they hired her. She said that they didn't even do a Google search on who she was. So would that include getting rid of these folks that were hastily onboarded?
No doubt. I mean, you're going to have to clear out ICE in particular of likely thousands of people who are deeply unqualified to do this job. So I mean it when I say that you're going to have to strip down and rebuild. That's not just practices and policy, that's personnel as well. Yes, there are many people who work for both of those agencies, CBP and ICE, who are there to do the job right, but especially these recent hires who just don't have the standards and the qualifications necessary to do this important work. Yes, a lot of them are going to have to go.
I want to just linger on abolish ICE for just one more moment, because there's, it's deja vu with defund police, and that felt right to a lot of Democrats in the moment. It felt necessary given what happened to George Floyd and the public sentiment in that moment, especially with Donald Trump in office and the way that he was trying to use law enforcement. It ended up being a political killer for Democrats. Donald Trump is back in office partially because Democrats are not seen as tough in the way that he was, and on immigration in particular. So if the party starts getting behind language like abolish ICE, and I know the polls show that the American public is not into ICE right now, are you worried that the party falls into the same trap of not being seen by the public at large as tough enough on immigration? They might want border control, border enforcement, but not like what ICE is doing. Are you going to fall into just being defined as weak?
Yeah, I mean, I'd maybe say two things about that. One, I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison, defund the police and abolish ICE. I mean, people have made up their minds in this country that they do not want this version of ICE. I think most people know we have to have a domestic enforcement mechanism for immigration laws, but people don't want this version of ICE. They want it to be radically different in the way that it operates. But I also am not spending a lot of time thinking about slogans right now, honestly, Katie. Like, we have a job to do in the next few days, which is to try to rescue the city of Minneapolis, which is under siege, to try to make sure that more Americans don't get killed. So I understand that it's an interesting conversation to talk about the impact of what we're doing on the next election, or using this word or that word. But, my job right now is to try to make sure that if we're going to fund the Department of Homeland Security, we're only going to fund an agency that is acting lawfully.
Yeah, point well taken. But ultimately, you're going to have to be in charge. The Democrats are going to have to be in charge in order to affect real change that they think is necessary. Is the government going to shut down partially on Friday?
That's up to Republicans. I mean, obviously, we have said we'll vote for every budget other than DHS today. So we can have 95% of the federal government funded by tonight. Republicans are not taking our offer. The reforms we're demanding for DHS, are ones that, again, as I mentioned, have been on the table for a while. We could come to agreement within the next few days. So if there's a shutdown of the 6 departments or 1 department, that's a choice that Republicans are going to make, not Democrats.
Are you on board with the idea of impeaching Kristi Noem? I know you're not going to be the impeacher, you're in the Senate, but would you convict?
I mean, I guess I never give advice on impeachment because we're going to be the triers of fact. She is unqualified. She's lying to the American public on a daily basis. But I don't necessarily want to train all of our focus on whose name is on the door. Stephen Miller is in charge of U.S. immigration policy. Donald Trump is in charge of U.S. immigration policy. Nobody should be shocked by what's happening here. He ran an entire campaign on convincing people that anybody who is not white, anybody who's got a foreign accent, is a security threat to the nation. So if Kristi Noem goes, that's good, but she'll be replaced by somebody that's just as radical and likely and equally pathological in their lying. I want the policy to be changed. I want the law to be changed so that there's less likelihood that another American citizen gets gunned down in cold blood, and we can take our case to the courts more easily when they do act outside of the bounds of the law.